inflation rate was so high, in the range of 13–14% on average, which automatically overvalued the currency. And then later on, and I think in Ishaq Dar's time period, they wanted to fix dollar at 100 rupees. So they declared their policy, which ultimately led to macroeconomic instability. Now, if we look at now, over the last 2 to 3 years, we have seen a significant improvement in macroeconomic stability. The dollar is now more stable. It is ranging between 153–54 rupees. It has gone up to 169 rupees. So I think that is the current picture of macroeconomic stability. So it appears that on the monetary side, there is some stability. And now at this time when the government is trying to make a budget, it's very challenging because of the intervention of IMF. When you knock the doors of IMF, so they will come with a standard program which they try to implement in every country they go. And the standard recipe, as we all know, is to cut government expenditure, to cut the losses of the public sector organization, and bring stability in the exchange rate by using the market forces. So good or bad, I think the current picture is that the government is now at a crossroad, because they have to decide now whether they want to have an expansionary policy or they want to continue with the previous policy, which actually had they put lots of brakes on, and that slowed down the process of economic growth. So as mentioned in the previous two seminars, that you cannot achieve the prosperity for a common man unless there is a high growth rate. So how one can go for the high growth rate? I think the body language of the new finance minister and other ministers is that they want to go for an expansionary policy, which means that they would like to perhaps adopt fiscal expansion, and which entails maybe increase in government spending or manipulation in tax rates. So perhaps they may manipulate some tax rates, the sales tax or income tax rates. And debt management is also an important aspect. And I would also like to add that in addition to all these things, they should also worry more about inequality, because I will highlight in a minute that why they should focus on inequality. So my first important point that I want to raise is that government should invest in agriculture. See, agriculture is suffering for the last many years, and there are many reasons for that. And I read a few days ago, about a special assistant to the Prime Minister on agriculture, and he said that they want to invest about 110 billion rupees to develop agriculture over the next 3 years. So their main focus would be on agricultural credit, which will be increased to 80% to around, let's say, 2.7 trillion. But unfortunately, the money that they want to spend is primarily linked with the fertilizer subsidy. They want to highlight also on the dairy sector, maybe import some semen, and they also want to adopt certain policies for the horticulture sector. So let us not forget that a major cause of decline in Pakistan's agriculture is lack of research and development. See, there was time when we used to invest a lot on creating, I think, on the human capital of our agricultural scientists who played a very important role in 1970s and 80s in developing several new varieties of seeds, which they were instrumental in bringing about substantial increase in agricultural output. But unfortunately, these seeds are hybrid seeds, and they are good for only a few years. So after a few years, they lose their productivity. So unless you continuously replace the previous varieties with the new varieties, so you can't keep on increasing your agricultural production. So unfortunately, in Pakistan, the number of new varieties that are coming up have substantially decreased if you compare the last 10 years with the previous 10 years. So I think there was a 50% decrease in the number of new varieties. And what does it indicate? It simply indicates that the investment on agriculture is not taking place. So if I give some facts about, let's say, one of the major commodities is wheat. And the wheat yield in Pakistan, if you compare with the region, is about 30% lower than other countries. See, for example, the potential of irrigated wheat in Pakistan is about 6 tons per hectare. And whereas Pakistan's current yield is only 2.5 to 3 tons per hectare. So India's, like in Indian Punjab, they are producing about 51 mounds per acre, whereas in Pakistan it is only 30 mounds per acre. So I think this is one of the major crops which is sown by about 80% of the farming community. And if we don't do anything about wheat sort of varieties, so what can be done? I think there are lots of things that can be done. Actually, you can't create human capital in a year or so, but there is a lot of potential that if we don't have enough capacity, so maybe you can give the initiative to the private sector. They can collaborate with the Chinese investors because they have developed very high quality seeds. So their seed industry is very well developed. I think that's one important point. And a related point is that the seed industry is, I think, in a mess because there are about 1,000 seed companies, and they are all in the informal sector, and there is no sort of seed regulation in operation. The major problem if you talk to any agriculturist, so they would say that they don't get good quality seeds. For example, the BT cotton is one example that the farmers, and that is also one reason that we don't see any growth in cotton production, because farmers are fed up with the low quality seeds. They are buying seed which is BT, which is supposed to have very little pest attack, but they have to put about 12 to 13 sprays in a year, even with a BT kind of seed. So this is just one example that how the farmers community is actually suffering because of the quality of seeds. So I think the seed is one of the major factors which can bring a turnaround in Pakistan's agriculture. So in other countries, they are talking about Green Revolution 2, which is mostly based on biotechnology, because it is growing at a very faster pace, and Pakistan has also benefited in some of the crops. So I think this is one area that I would like to highlight, that for God's sake, let's put in some money into the research and development of agriculture. If you want to do something for agriculture, it's not the fertilizer subsidy, because it's a very sort of short-term measure and it will not have any impact. And similarly, I think there is also the story for other crops. There is story for the livestock and the dairy sector. See, Pakistan is considered as the fourth largest producer of milk in the country, but the yield of the dairy cattle is not comparable with any country at our level. See, for example, in Pakistan, the average lactation yield of is less than 23 kg, which is far less than the average, which is about 6,000 kg. So I think it's about 1/3 of the potential that we have. So that's another area where the government perhaps can invest. So, and I think another sort of point that I want to highlight is that the role of the livestock and dairy is more than crop sector in the GDP. See, for example, 11 point something is for the livestock and 9 point something for the crop sector. But unfortunately, there is no data collection. See, since 2006, there is no livestock census. We don't have any data that you can use to plan any policies on agriculture. So I think that's my first point, that investing in agriculture is one of the key if we want to actually do something for this important sector, despite the fact that this is the provincial subject, but food security is directly under the federal government subject. So I think that's why they can collaborate with the provincial government to policy. Now, my second important point is that the government should stop intervention in the wheat market. See, now what we know from economic theory is that when market fails to clear on its own, so state should intervene. Then, only then it is desirable that state should intervene. But we regulate wheat market, which is a textbook example of perfect competition. But we leave industrial consumers at the mercy of the oligopolist. See, oligopoly has emerged as the most common type of market structure, where a small number of dominant firms, they closely compete with each other. See, they can easily collude to manipulate prices. See, for example, if I give one example which directly affects a common man, and that is the automobile market, in which out of 13 firms producing 2 and 3 wheelers, 4 firms, and they are Atlas Honda, United Autos, Road Prince, and Yamaha. They account for 95% of the share in sales in 2020. So 95% of the share is in the hands of 4 companies. There is no regulation in this industry, but we want to regulate wheat market, which is perfectly comparative market. See, so what are the implications? Well, I think I would like government to actually stay away from the wheat market, and I know that there are lots of reports by FAO, by World Bank, by local, let's say, expert on the agriculture sector. So they have been arguing that government should stay away from it, because this is a drain on the name of providing food security, but its impact is very little, because most countries have phased out public sector procurement of food grain and its distribution. And because even though its objective is to protect producers from volatile price variation and to provide food security, but I think it has not succeeded in getting the desired result. Government is energetic when there is deficit, but it is lethargic when there is surplus produced in the market. Now, the wheat procurement policy has a high budget cost. It has led to buildup of debt. It distorts markets. It does not provide any direct benefit to the small farmers, and it has not impacted on the productivity. So procurement is financed by borrowing from banking consortium, and borrowing has increased from 37 billion in 2001 to about 433 billion. So this is the money that government borrows, and this is mostly the provincial government. Federal government also has its role in it. And there is an annual markup of about 40 billion just for the borrowing to purchase the wheat from the farmer. Now, because the provincial governments do not settle commodity bank loans each year, it has led to yet another circular debt issue other than electricity and gas. Now, sale of wheat to wheat flour, to flour mills at fixed price. The government actually releases to the flour mill at a price which is lower than the market price. But flour mills then are free to sell atta in the open market, and there is no control on it, even if government wants to control it, but they always fail. Now, my suggestion is that government should stop this intervention because cereal or wheat as a cereal has reduced importance in the household food basket because they are moving away towards dairy, meat, and eggs. And I think with the passage of time, the annual per capita consumption of wheat has declined. See, in 1979, an average household, an average person used to consume 134 kg. Now, the per capita consumption has gone down to about 87 kg. I have made some calculation just to highlight that how insignificant this particular issue is. The average per capita expenditure on wheat, flour, if you take the market price, it is only about 470 to 500 rupees per month. The average एक आदमी की जो spending है, वो तकरीबन maximum 500 रुपए per month है. So if there is an 8-member household, so monthly cost of wheat is about 4,000 per month. See, and if there is a 20% increase in wheat price, which government suspects that what will happen if there is increase in wheat price, even if there is a 20% increase in wheat price, the annual budget of an 8-member household would increase by only 800 rupees. So 800 rupees आजकल तो एक individual internet जो package है वो खरीदने में लगा देता है. My main point here is that wheat consumption has lost its importance in the budget of an average household, especially the lower income group, because we want to protect food security of those who are in the lower income group. And my main point is that the share of wheat in overall budget has significantly gone down. So therefore, the government should stay away from it. I think in recent years, government has stepped back from rice market. They were also intervening in the rice market in the same way. And we have stepped back, and there are positive results. There is no complaint from the wheat sector, but there are always complaints from rice sector में कोई complaint नहीं है. Wheat की हमेशा complaints हैं. If you read the newspapers, every day there are stories about corruption. about mismanagement, and there are lots of other issues that arise. So let wheat price fluctuate in a certain band and intervene only if the price is outside that band. So you fixed a band because the price cannot be kept fixed throughout the year because of the storage cost. The price should increase gradually from the harvesting time to till the next crop. So I think keeping this fixed doesn't make much sense to me. It should be kept in a certain band, and government should maintain strategic reserves. Normally, it could be about 2 million tons, and intervene only under certain agreed regulatory parameters. So I think this is my suggestion. I can talk about that more if there are any questions. My third important point is investing in primary and secondary education. See, now this is a key target of Sustainable Development Goal 10, SDG 10, says to achieve economic growth of the poorest 40% of the population at a rate higher than the national average. Now, this is what is required. By 2030, I think we need to achieve this target. Now, I would like to highlight the wage inequality in Pakistan, and there are some very interesting facts. And this is based on my own research. I did a report for Oxfam, which is also available somewhere on the website. Now, wage inequality, if you look at the data, labor force survey agar aap dekhein, so wage inequality has increased since 1990. There is a clear outward shift in the Gini, in the Lawrence curve. If you take any other measure, I think they will all indicate that inequalities in wages have increased. What is more significant here is that there is a rising gulf between higher and lower levels of education. See, when I say higher level, I mean college education and above. And when I say lower education, I mean secondary education and less. So there are two major classes, and which are most consequential in the rising wage inequality in Pakistan. See, if I give you some number, the gap in annual median wage of a college educated versus a non-college educated male worker has increased from 9,600 in 1991 to 156,000 rupees in 2017-18. And this is real gap. The gap in 1991 between a college educated and a secondary school or less educated was about 10,000 rupees. Now this gap has gone up to 156,000 increase. And this increase is about 16 times the 1991 level. See, this is 16 times. Similar kind of numbers from US suggest, there is a paper by David Otter, a professor in MIT, and he has found that in US between 1980 and 2012, wages have the gap between college and let's say high school graduates have increased by 4 times. So their gap has increased by 4 times. In Pakistan, this gap has increased 16 times. So this is a substantial increase. So similar kind of trend is also found in the female worker. If you look at their wage, so it has increased by 13 times. And even if I take data of recent times, so I found out that from 2000 to 2018, there is a 7-time increase in the wage gap between, let's say, college educated versus school educated. And if you take the data of last 10 years, there is a 2.4 times increase in wages. Now, I think this is very, very important because what it indicates is that the return to skills indicate that the quality of human capital is stagnant at the lower end. The quality of human capital at the lower end is stagnant and it is growing at the upper end. See, more educated are much better productive now than what they were before. See, and I think this differential perhaps is a reflection of the fact that the demand for, let's say, more educated has increased after 2000, and it is significantly increasing because there are more jobs which require some skills. Like the clerical jobs are an administrative assistant jobs. They are gradually being phased out in the private sector because of the technology, and so they are using more and more technology. So I think this provides major insights why this has happened. And as a result, the employment opportunities for non-college graduates, they have declined and opportunities for others have gone up. So this is, I think, one of the major factors which is a real concern. Another important thing is that the role of the labor union has substantially gone down. The bargaining power is not important. The labor laws after the 18th Amendment, they were also, it is a provincial subject now. And I can tell you that the labor legislation does not apply to the banking sector, financial institution. There is no application, and there are also other areas where they do not apply. So I think there are a number of factors, and I can also talk about that more later on. And finally, I think I would also like to highlight another factor which is quite well known, and that is lack of investment. See, saving investment rates in Pakistan are one of the lowest. We are still, I think, hanging around about 15 to 17% of investment. And if you look at the countries which post high growth rates, you will never find a country which has less than 25%, let's say, investment rate, and they could post a sustained growth in GDP. See, so there are a lot, I think the average investment rate in South Asia is about 33%, and this is based on recent data that I have seen. 32% is the rate, like including countries like Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, Nepal, Pakistan, Sri Lanka. And Pakistan is the lowest, even below Afghanistan, below Bhutan, below Nepal. So this is the rate. So unless you have a high investment rate, now why this problem has not been solved, I don't know. I don't see a lot of discussion. We do talk about the tax rate. Actually, the tax to GDP ratio remains somewhere between 8% to 12%. It has never exceeded 12%. So I think this is another important aspect which the policymakers may want to highlight. So because I think if you talk about the growth accounting framework, so GDP per capita comes from two main sources. One is growth in factor inputs and efficiency. So we are neither able to succeed in let's say factor accumulation nor in achieving higher productivity. So productivity growth is also low, and the factor accumulation in the form of let's say capital and labor, that is also very low. So I think these are four main points that I want to highlight, and I would like to stop here with these remarks. Thank you.
Dr. Nadeem, sir, kindly unmute yourself, sir.
Thank you, Abid Saab. Thank you very much. Very good, very comprehensive. I think these issues are very important. Abid Saab, you and I both have memories to remember that we've talked about the agricultural issues for the last 50 years, or somewhere around there. I remember Sarfraz Qureshi. I remember Sarfraz Aziz Saab, everybody talking about liberalizing the agricultural market. Unfortunately, in this country, nobody reads, nobody understands, so we don't have any idea. But in any case, points are well taken. Even your returns to skill, very, very good argument, very interesting. And of course, investment should be a major preoccupation. You'll be amused to know, glad to know that in PID, we've been stressing this a lot. We've taken on a new growth strategy just now, which we sent to the Planning Commission, which we think is the makings of a growth strategy in Pakistan. We've stressed all these things that you've talked about. So we'll continue to collaborate with you and see how we can develop these things further. Okay, now I'll turn to Ikramul Haq Saab. Ikramul Haq Saab, go ahead. What is your take on the budget?
Thank you very much, Nadeem, and all friends here, as well as both institutions that they are providing opportunity to us to, in fact, share and interact in a manner that we ultimately tell the governments that budget is not only ritualistic, bureaucratic counting exercise, it must be backed by some objectives as growth. We have been talking, and Pide has come up with a very good strategy on that. But I will just focus on 2 or 3 things, and not will take more time, because facts and figures we all know that in the first 9 months of this fiscal year, we saw that even after transferring taxes share to the provinces under the 7th NFC award, we still have a very old one and failed to arrive at a new one. And 58.5% transfer and on non-tax income could not enough even to pay 2 main heads, was debt servicing and defense. For defense, the borrowing for the 9 months was like 244 billion rupees. And we must remember that defense is not now a very big amount. If we even include their pensions, that is 1/3 of the debt servicing. So the main issue now is that we have to see things in proper perspective first. My take is that our first and foremost fault after 18th Amendment, which 10 years have gone, it's 11th year that we have entered after that, is that whether planning should be centralized or it should be federalized. As far as I understand, as a student of Constitution, Article 156 of Article Clause 2 says that from now on it should be a federalized subject. But as you know, they don't engage with each other on political issues. What to speak of attending meetings, and Prime Minister has to chair that, and the role of National Economic Council in overall economic development, long-term perspective, your growth, your revenues, your expenditure, everything has to be federalized. The idea was not to actually give the kind of framework that we usually talk about, that everything has been given to the provinces. Still, we know that all major taxes are with the Federal Board of Revenue, and if they fail to collect at the optimum level, whatever the convenient policy and other things we keep on writing is, but if they fail to collect what is required by the government, all the governments, then of course you will have always a crisis. And that crisis is that we have been seeing that we have to go 22 times to IMF in 60 years. which itself confirms that there are some fundamental issues to be fixed. And when we keep on talking about growth, investment, and other things, we usually overlook that taxation itself is anti-growth in this country because they are taxing everything. They don't want activities to take place. They don't want economy to grow. When you have this kind of taxation policy, which is neither helping you to grow nor it is helping you to minimize your fiscal deficit, then what is the need of this kind of taxation? Then there is, as far as policy is concerned, there is no policy. There's no, only FPR people sit and decide what kind of taxation should be. There is no role of legislators that just rubber stamp in that. Finance bill, when it comes, nobody can read it or write on it. Uh, Many economists even can't read that nonsensical changes they make in existing tax codes. So my first take is that there is a lot of talk about sectoral growth, other things, but how much taxes are inbuilt in inputs which we are using for agriculture? There's no study for that. Then they keep on saying that Pakistanis are tax thieves and Pakistanis are tax cheat as a nation. This agenda is always there by our government, by lenders, by donors. Whereas the fact is that latest figures show that we have now 101 million broadband users because the surge is because of this COVID-19 thing. It was from jump from 80 million to 101 million in just 3 months or 4 months. The latest that I have seen on Pakistan telecommunication site is now that we have overall 186 million, and all of them, even if they have two or three or five say sames, or they are also have employees they are paying. But the fact is that governments are extracting, provincial government 19.5% state tax on services. In ICT, you have 17% federal excise duty on that, and third is your 12.5% income tax. Now you can say that we are saying that now internet is a right of every person. It should be provided free. And on the other hand, nobody is pointing out that this is the highest, fourth highest tax sector in Pakistan. So the contradictions in policies can be removed through fiscal measures, that we should eliminate these taxes at source. The major problem with industrial growth or agriculture or services sector, whatever you will take, you will see that what they do is that at import stage or at some other place, when even transaction is not taking place or taking place but not giving rise to any kind of taxable activity, they want you to pay in advance. So this concept of advance tax has become a part of a permanent disease in our fiscal policy. Britishers imposed it after Second World War to control inflation, and since then they have gone. But both Pakistan and India, their main reliance, like 65%, is on withholding taxes. And this withholding taxes is not only for income taxation; it is also for sale tax on services. Four provinces have four laws. So if a trans-provincial entity is doing business in Pakistan, it has to file uh, five returns, one to Federal Board of Revenue every month and four to the provinces. And if they are also doing business in Azad, Jammu and Kashmir, then they have their own tax setup and they have to file there. So this tax system is taking so much, not only you have used the word confusion, it's a disastrous sort of impact on our daily life, because we don't even understand, and none of us see that even in our mobile bills, how much tax they are charging, how much they are on electricity, on sui gas, whatever utilities, then mobile, as I have said. So there are three major issues that we need to fix. One is this fragmentation of tax administration, which is now creating a lot of problem for the trade, inter-provincial trade, because when you do some transaction, one province say it is my share, and the other said no, no, it's my share, because service go started from Punjab but it terminated in Sindh, so I will charge. Punjab say no, no, you are Punjab entity, you are registered here and you pay us tax here. Having said that, even then in first 9 months, after 3.8 trillion collection by Federal Board of Revenue, much trumpet and growth, and 57 year-to-year on basis, and even Prime Minister tweeting in their favor, everything. I not want to take any credit from them, but the fact is that they have to pay huge funds to the people. And this is also a kind of debt which is nobody talking about. Before Parliament, they admitted that the liability is as high as 711. It was the last 30th June I was talking. First have now over 800 billion. So effective rate, if we take this payable, which is undisputed, and collection will not be more than 7%. But the image of the department itself is like you are so afraid to go to tax office, like you always, and I am included to go to a thana because of the culture there, that the way they treat you. So the same is true here. So you have been writing, we have been writing that we need to have first structural changes in administration, because ultimately whatever budget you make, and they will say we have increased PTS to 1 trillion, how much they expanded. Now in the first 9 months, the only expanding out of 900 or whatever the figure was only 40%. Now Shaukat Sahab, new finance minister, is saying I will increase it to 900 billion. So 900 billion increase is not only it's just a kind of allocation matters. What is the quality of expenditure? What cost of and delays? And we all know what happens to these projects, and they are just in the habit of showing that we have put 900 billion, we have increased it to 1 trillion, and their own summary is showing on the finance ministry website that in the first 9 months, they only managed to spend 40% of that. So this fact that we are now looking into, it requires that there should be end to this kind of nonsensical things to keep on repeating and then expecting that result will be different. Obviously, if you keep on repeating the mistakes, as I said, you will get the same kind of results. So many pre-webinars on budget, not by Guide and others. Many even tax bars are very fond of holding them. Everybody is interested in that. But who has to ultimately look into that? Legislators or policy? There are policy. I have already mentioned as far as taxation is concerned. It is Federal Board of Revenue. Expense is concerned, it is the Federal Finance Ministry, and in provincial, they have Board of Revenues dealing with revenue record. They have they have their own excise and taxation departments. They have now added third layer, which is only collecting sale tax on services. So government size is increasing, expenditure unnecessarily. They can at least at one point or data sharing, and they can multiplicity of and duplicity, and then this huge cost can be reduced. But nobody talks about that. Why you need three kind of tax agencies in the province? Or this I'm not including Social Security and UIB, and then WWF, and then WPPT, and all kind of different departments. So what we have seen in other federation is that this is one single national tax agency. They also work as paying you your social security, your income support, and many other things. So they are not having different SRs or Benazir income support program, and then we don't know that whether we should borrow money from World Bank to give more money to SRs, and ultimately whether it will improve rural poverty or it have any impact on overall empowerment of the lower ladder, less privileged people. And we have a lot of charity models, but we have been seeing their impact as well. So how to fix this state is my real issue, that in any budget you can't expect much of three things. This will be income, this will go to province, this will be left, our expenses are much higher than this, so we will have to borrow. So in the very first 9 months, the data they have provided to us is that fiscal deficit, they are showing that it's 1.6 trillion, and they're very happy, say 0.2, 0.2 less than the last year. But where is the desire actually to redesign the system? You have to reconstruct the system. You can't reform incorrigible human beings as well as institutions. They have outdated, outmoded. So my concern is that these things are done in universities outside. They are not only degree giving factories, and we have paper degree factories all over Pakistan. But where is the idea? There is research. Where the research is linked with the government decision making? And these are the fundamental questions. Not we keep on talking about fiscal deficit and tax to GDP ratio and our debt burden and these things. These are all, Greek to a person in the street or living in a village. This is for us, some experts to make models and projects, but nobody is actually talking about that where the actual problem lies. If you will keep on curing symptoms, what will happen? The root cause will remain there. So hit the root cause, remove that, reconstruct your all institutions, not only administration, your judicial system, or even your legislature. So you need everywhere to first fix your systems. Otherwise, the best policies, even if we can hand over to them as many did, they will never work. So to me, the fundamental question is not of making some tinkering with tax codes here and there, rates here and there. I know that they collect 55% at import stage, then all the withholding taxes. And you will not be astonished, and you can see the yearbook last one of FBR that their own collection was only 3% of the total income tax collection. Other, of course, sale tax people collect for them and pay to them, and how many pay and how many keep it with them, we all know. So there are huge leakages. We don't know about that because our systems are not there to cater for the modern things. Now we are talking about agriculture, but most of the time we don't know that we have skilled labor to handle modern equipment. Have we produced any young people? They can even go and plow the field with tractors. And even we have any at Tehsil headquarters, any kind of farmers training schools. So what we are saying is that we will do this, we will do that. But where is the software which we have been talking about? You don't have good IT people. I asked them, if can you make my website for the tax system which has data from 1876 to till today. Say 1876, yes. I said yes, when Britishers first time they imposed taxes here, then 1919, then 1922 Act, then came 1979 Act by ordinance by a dictator, and then we had another one from another dictator in 2001, and we never bothered about that we are even our income taxation, which is very important from many perspective, and we have given like inheritance tax and which was instituted in Pakistan, and wealth taxation and other to the provinces. So even nobody knows that. I keep on reading articles of people that they ask federal government to levy wealth tax for inheritance tax without knowing that after 18th Amendment, they are not part of federal legislative list anymore. So how they can do that? So I think there is also a dearth of knowledge and also informed discussion among our own experts as well. And many of them are going with some misgivings, and they are living in an era which is at least a decade old since 18th Amendment has come. So what kind of fiscal amendment should be after the 18th Amendment should be the starting point of research, and let us all join hand and make it that how you can remain within this framework, but you can increase the size of pie, you can eliminate your wasteful expenditure, the agriculture, you keep on writing about plots and benefits and perks. Why we are not ready to fix the fundamental things and keep on talking about tax to GDP ratio? We keep on talking about that our revenues are low. When agriculture is, what average ratio is 19 or 20%, and there is no taxation at all. So first take out 20% out of your GDP, and then you recalculate your tax to GDP ratio, because they are not collecting anything. Although they have agriculture income tax, but their share in total taxation is 0. I have calculated for the last year it was 0.06%. So what is the fun of having law and not implementing that? So I will end here giving some food for thought that let us come out of this conventional thinking, and let us go for one slogan that let us deconstruct and reconstruct on modern lines everything. Then if you want some kind of efficiency, we want investment, we want growth. There is no disagreement on this thing, Nadeem and other people. The real problem is that we want to achieve these with outdated, outmoded structural frameworks, which are no more helpful to us to achieve these things. Here I will stop, and I will later on will talk if there are some questions.
Thank you, Ji. Thank you, Ikram Saab. I think you're absolutely right. The policy is very fragmented. The policy is based on arbitrary assumptions of withholding, and there's no desire to return the money. And there are so many other issues. Unfortunately, you're absolutely right. Even our intellectuals seem to be very, very confused about budget and tax policy. But let me go to in these webinars, what we've tried to do, Ipri and Pide, is to arrange it such that we have the older generation and the younger generation. Because I think the generational conflict also has to be thought about. So you just heard the older generation's views on the budget. Now let's go to the younger generation and see what they will say. So Mahmoud Salahuddin Ayubi. Salahuddin Saab, will you go ahead and say your views as quickly as possible? Ji. Salahuddin Saab, unmute kar lein, please.
Ji, thank you, sir. Thank you, Nadeem Saab. Thank you. One privilege of attending this webinar is getting the title of being young, because one really craves for it in his mid-40s. But anyways, thank you very much. This is a great effort that Ipri and Pide has been doing in creating a space for discussion over issues that usually people do not understand really. So this is a great opportunity for everyone to hear. There has been a lot of talk about the capacity. Capacity has been the buzzword. The core idea is that perhaps those who are doing what they're doing are either not aware how to do it, or they are not interested in doing it. Perhaps we need to reconfigure our expectation of those who are at the helm of affairs. There is an apparatus that is involved in making these budgets, and they have their own expectations and their own fulfillments. The title, as it appears, austerity versus growth. All political or even non-representative regimes, they would wish to have growth come what may, and the donors would wish to have austerity, and there's this clash that makes budget making really difficult in countries like Pakistan. So first of all, there are a lot of stakeholders that would wish to put their views in such fora that could express their sentiment or their expectation from the budget makers. And those who are very strong somehow manage to get their ideas across through, through their access to the power corridors. But those who do not have access to be in those power corridors, they need to have their sentiments being thrown into those segments. In principle, I think that there is no lack of knowledge in doing things in the right manner. If you read the budget this medium-term budget concept paper, strategy paper, you would find nearly everything that is conceivable to get things right. On the tax side, on the expenditure side, they've got their laws amended to get things in the right manner. They've empowered the right stakeholders. Then where is the problem? If you look at the big numbers, let me share with you the big numbers of the upcoming budget. We've got 7.9 trillions, according to the concept paper, 7.9 trillions that the government expects to receive in gross revenue receipts. There are expense requirements or there are payment requirements. If the government gives away 3.5, as the strategy paper says, to the provinces, gives away 3.1 trillion to the in the interest payments, and then spends 1.3 on defense, the total amount left from the gross revenue receipts for the next year is 27 billion. 27 billion. Now, this is what would make us understand how difficult is the task of running this country that has reached where it has reached as a result of series of mistakes that have been made in the past. And if the mistakes would be made in the present time, the future is going to be more difficult than it is at the present time. So 27 billion is left after giving to the provinces, after payment for the interest payments and the defense expenditure. There is 27 billion. You have to have PSDP. You have to run your federal government. You have to run. You have to give away pensions. But 27 billions. What kind of smartness would put this house in order in the present shape? We need to collectively create a space for the government to be truthful rather than being apologetic and always trying to find out an excuse that we are doing great, and always passing on the blame on the previous governments that we are in this situation because the previous governments have taken us to the point where we have reached here. There are no angels and demons. Generally we tend to fix things. IMF is a demon, our government is an angel. Present government would consider itself as an angel and the opposition would consider it as a demon. So we got to bring ourselves out of that mold of declaring each other's demons and angels. Ghalib, the famous poet, he has a line, Janta hoon sawabe ta to zuhd. I know the fruits of piety. Janta hoon sawabe ta to zuhd. But tabiyat idhar nahi aati. I still don't want to go this way. I know the fruits of piety. I still don't want to go that way. So the government knows the fruits of piety, of taking the right decisions, but it still does not go that way. Then there is some fundamental inhibition that the government suffers from, that it needs to put on paper, that it does not. And it has not happened in the past. It's not happening now. The strategy paper is more like, hope. Hope is not a strategy. So there are hopes. There is very little information that we could, we could say that it's a strategy paper. But whatever it is, it carries a lot of hope. So firstly, we need to stop blaming government that it does not know how to do budget making. Budget making is difficult. It is difficult. I believe it is a little too easy. Making budgets and getting them passed is too easy in this country, and that's the problem. United States of America, the largest country in the world by a huge margin, it has its president, Donald Trump, that has its flagship project of building a wall. And the total, allocation that was required for that wall, according to him, was 11 billion, 12 billion, and what eventually went on to around 20 billion. From a budget of 4,000 billion annually, he could not get more than 11 or 12 billion in 4 years. Such is the difficulty in getting things done, because such is the extent of the rules and system in place that, the all-powerful president, having all the executive power, he could not get in 4 years, where the budget in each year is 4,000 billion, he could not get 4 billion in each year. So getting the budget done is so easy that doing it wrongly becomes the natural choice. It's like a kid who does not have a lot of, who is too hungry to hold his impatience for any longer and goes after eating without understanding the damage it would do to itself. So firstly, budget making in this country is far too easy, and there should be checks, inherent checks that should be brought in to make this system or this process of budget making a little more disciplined. Imagine, look at the time it takes for the budget to get passed. Imagine the time it takes for the parliament of this country to discuss the budget of 200 million. There are, so many people there. They don't get, sometimes the average time per parliamentarian is less than 3 or 4 minutes. So what kind of policy making should we expect from an apparatus that works that way? Why does it work that way? Because it is very afraid. Our political administrations are very afraid. Look at the kind of political, scene that the country has at the moment, that, each day there is a speculation, would the government survive another year? The budget concept paper was presented by one finance minister, and budget is going to be presented by another finance minister. So in the middle of all this uncertainty, it's going to become more and more difficult for the government. So firstly, my proposal is government should try to have a right course of action by being truthful. There was this soap play in India, Indian soap play, Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi. The mother-in-law was once a daughter-in-law. The opposition was once in government, and the government is going to be once in opposition. They got to realize the compulsions that they're facing. They must not. So there should be a bipartisan alliance through discussions that take place in fora like this, that push the governments to declare their agendas in a clear manner, not in an abstract manner through their manifestos. Just like Barki Saab said, he spoke about agriculture a great deal. I, supervised the research just a few months ago. It got completed. It was about, assessment of economic agenda being presented in the manifestos of the four leading political parties. And you know what? The most dominant part of the coverage in the manifestos of one sector that receives, that's agriculture, by a huge margin. If you look at the agenda that is there in terms of word count in the manifestos for agriculture, that is, nearly more than the rest of the agenda about all the other sectors in terms of word count. But these are, so rounded, so empty pledges that nothing can be said about it. So a bipartisan agenda should be pushed to all the leading political parties, that they must put it in their manifesto document so that they can be held responsible. So if we are going to run our fiscal policy the way we are running, it's going to be more difficult. Machiavelli, the famous political scientist, he said that the job of a politician is like that of a physician. At the early stage of a disease, it is most difficult to diagnose and easiest to remedy in the early stage. But as the time passes, the diagnosis starts becoming easier and the solution becomes difficult. So a statesman must not delay his assessment of a problem to a point where everyone knows about the problem, but nobody has a solution. So we have, unfortunately, historically, have delayed to attempt to solve the problems because of being too pushed to the wall, because of seeking growth. Now, enough of the discussion about this. I should quickly go to the idea of austerity and growth. Of course, every government is going to go for growth. Growth, someone would say pro-poor growth, inclusive growth, that, how to have high growth, sustainable growth. But I tell you, the growth that they're interested is in growth. They don't care whether it's inclusive or exclusive. They don't care whether it's pro-poor or not. They want to declare a number that this is what we've done. It was like this in a youth period. He didn't care about how this growth is coming in. If the cost of the aggregate growth of 10 years of a youth plan is partition of the country, who would be willing to pay a price as high as, getting a country partitioned? There is a lot of, discussion about it, that a lot of the way UConn gave growth to this country directly led to the events that, that led to the, consequential partition. So growth, we need to qualify growth. If growth is coming in a manner, Joseph Stiglitz says that perhaps it was excessive growth of Europe that led it to the Great Recession of 2007. If you're going to eat up the potential that the system has to offer, in a short period of time, the system would go, bust when that time would come. So we got to rationalize our expectation of creating growth. I would propose that growth that we need is job-based growth. We need jobs. So all the drivers of growth should somehow focus on getting the growth from sectors that are pro-job creation. Now, large-scale manufacturing has historically been the favorite in engendering growth in this country. From the 50s and the 60s and onward, whenever you would find high growth period in this country, the growth is coming in from the large-scale manufacturing. We all know that you can have quick growth from large-scale manufacturing by giving them support that they ask and they even not ask, by giving them protection that is required and that is not required, by continuing to give them protection. There is a regular appearance of one industry or another industry to put up an advertisement on a newspaper by putting the face of all those who are powerful on the top of this ad and asking for whatever they wish. So we need to look at the SME sector because that's small. If 100 million or 200 million SME sector can bring exports, well, that's not viable. Even if they are bringing that export revenues without any government support or without sufficient government support, that they do not receive as much attention as the attention that is being received by these mega. I am not saying that show disregard to those sectors, but then hold them responsible also. If the textile in the net analysis becomes a recipient of government exchequer, we need to hold them responsible. This is a sector that has received so much benefit over the years. So we need to have a course correction. Excessive protection should gradually be withdrawn. Nothing should be done abruptly, but should gradually be withdrawn. Selective attention should gradually be extended to SMEs because they can create jobs. Then we know the economy, 60% is services. Around 40% is agriculture and manufacturing put together. So we need to find growth in sector that is the largest sector, that services sector. And this is the most affected sector by COVID. Therefore, we need to find out ways to revive this sector, because this sector can create jobs. Not everything that is in services can create jobs. So we need to find out those service sectors that can create jobs. Now, one of the largest part of services sector is wholesale and retail trade. It is facing a disruption through e-commerce, and it's not prepared for it. We should be prepared for a damage that could come in a big way. I don't know when. So we cannot afford to keep ignoring the imperatives that need to be done just to have growth. So going for this discussion about the austerity. Austerity, it's a good thing. Austerity is a good thing. You look at austerity in an academic manner, it's a good thing. So austerity should be there. But when austerity comes from donors' perspective, it has its own meaning. No political dispensation would be interested in adopting austerity the way a donor wishes. Not even the European countries are interested. Look at how Francois Hollande looked at the austerity demands by ECB, in 2012. So no political government can afford to adopt austerity blindly as demanded or as expected by the donors. So we need to look at, we got to get our house in order. If I again, reflect upon my reading of the strategy paper, you would not find the word austerity anywhere, and rightly so. Why should the government be interested in it? But the government should be interested in it for the sake of running the government. They got to have the right kind of expenses, the right kind of ways to raise revenues. Now imagine 27 billion after payment of the 3 items for everything from PSDP, for running of the government, for giving away the pension. How would we get our deficits shortened? 7.7 billion, how can we make it 6 billion just because of hopes? That's an unlikely situation. So I think that the budget strategy paper, the way we receive it, is putting up a picture that is more of hope than of strategy. Numbers are there without detailed explanation of how would they expect these numbers to come. Good thing is that this new act coming in 2019 has made this imperative on the government to present this paper, and then we can have this discussion out there in open, and then hold the government responsible. I think transparency is not just a word; it's a set of practices, and we should ask for it. What was the view of the cabinet when the concept paper was presented to it? How did the standing committee looked at, and what were the observations? That should all come out in public, so that the smaller sectors and the SME sector that never get to receive the kind of attention that they deserve over the years, they can also have that attention. I think I've taken a lot of time. A lot more can be said, but thank you very much for giving this opportunity and making my submission possible.
Thank you, Salahuddin sir. Thank you very much. I think you've made very good points. Yes, politics is behind the budget, and yes, we've got a very bad politics, but I think the capacity issue is also there. I don't have your sanguine hope that the government knows what it's doing. But I don't think the academia knows what they're doing too, because the academia also never really analyzes the issue. But let me go to the next speaker, Saber Saab, Mohammed Saber from SPDC. Saber Saab, go ahead.
Thank you, Nadeem Saab, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to speak on this important issue. I have to talk about just 3 points, not much. And my first point is the fiscal deficit. For me, the most scary figure is the fiscal deficit for me. From the last 2 years, we saw the fiscal deficit of the huge amount of 9.1% of the GDP and 8.1% of the GDP. This year, government budgeted 7.1%, and so far we have, in 3 months, we have 9 months, we have 3.6% of the budget deficit. But we don't know where we ended up, and this is happening from the couple of years and even before that. Why I'm worried about the fiscal deficit? Because budget creates some all the budget have some gainers and some losers, and they are not the same persons. So our budget also benefited some lobbyists, government employees, and some other groups, but it cost most of the middle class. And as housed in the Social Policy Center, I'm really worried about that class who is paying the taxes, who are salaried, they are paying regular taxes, they are contributing in the economy, and they are also facing the burden of the inflation due to this high budget deficit. They are also feeling the burden of the debt, and they are not getting any benefit of it. For instance, if we are accumulating large benefit, the capital class gets the interest payment. But this middle class, those do not have the savings, they do not get anything out of it. And there is no program for them to get benefit. So SAS program is a good program, but it's mostly for the low income group or poor classes. So one of the things what I said, we should have something to keep the budget deficit intact. We are not in position to carry on the big budget deficit. At the moment, half of the expenditure is non-service related expenditure. So we are not getting anything. We are just transferring money, and this practice should not be carried on further. So this is my first point. And one of the suggestions I have for the middle class, when we are in the salary net, when these people are in salary net, they are contributing in the taxes. But for any reason, say if they are laid off, they got off, there is no unemployment benefits. So one of the suggestions for this budget is if maybe government, in collaboration with provinces or EOBI, we should have a mechanism where we talk about unemployment benefit, particularly those who are contributing the taxes and those who are contributing in the EOBI. So this is my first point. My second point is the taxes. I totally agree. We need more taxes. We need finances. We need money for development. We need money for the SDGs. We need money for everything. We need money to provide stimulus for the COVID peoples. But the mechanism we are devising, that is not the right mechanism according to my thinking. And why I'm saying that? Look the two big taxes. For instance, your income tax. In your income tax, you have different structures, and you are not capable to tax one large segment, which is agriculture sector. I'm totally supportive that there should be some packages for agriculture sector. They should be given incentive, but they should get the proper taxation. And one of the myths everybody is beating, that because agriculture is the provincial subject, federal government cannot intervene in it, and so they keep this loophole as it is. And I totally disagree with that. When we introduces services tax in 2000, federal government with just one letter took the entire power of collecting the taxes. My idea is that we should do the same thing. Agriculture income tax treated as the income tax, and it should be collected by the federal government. And provincial government they didn't require to give the constitutional amendment. They just give the collection power to the federal government. And why I'm saying this, because there is a lot of income which is accrued from different sector, but it's reported in the agriculture sector because they feel that there is no agriculture income tax and there is no proper agriculture income tax. So one thing we should fix, we should treat all incomes, no matter it's come from the construction, no matter it comes from the imports, from whichever sector, income is income. And we should tax all income in the same way. The way is to collect progressive income taxation. So this is my point about this income tax. My second point is about the sales tax. We did some analysis in the SPDC, and what interestingly we found, even those who are in the formal sector, who are large scale manufacturing, they are underreporting their production. And why they are doing so? Because there is a retail taxation at the production, final production stage. So what government is doing, or what FPR effectively is doing, they collect all taxes, including wholesale tax, retail tax, at the production stage. But this gives an incentive for the companies to not report properly to the FPR. And my point is that we should look into it. We should introduce multi-stage consumption tax in the country. We need to involve provincial government even in the cases. So maybe we have a better mechanism. We have some monitoring mechanism as well, but until unless we do not involve different tax collection authorities, we are not able to fully capitalize the potential which exists in the excise duty and the sales tax. And we need to focus on it. So my second point is, we need to restructure our taxation system. We need to club all income in the income tax, and we have a uniform method of collecting income tax. We need a lot of required, rather than beating all those who are already in the tax net. They are paying taxes, but we are revising the taxes. We are giving the hardship to them, and we are even providing the incentive to underreport the taxes. On the other hand, I'm saying we should also club all the sales tax, but we have a multiple stage sales tax. So consumption tax should not be collected on the single stage. Consumption stage should be collected on the at least 3 stage: production stage, distributors stage, and wholesale and retail stage. And we have the mechanisms so far we can easily collect these taxes. And the provincial government already collecting the sales tax on services. They now collect the sales tax on wholesale and retail tax. My third point is about the effectiveness of the expenditure side. We looked a lot of expenditure in the past. We have the very big CPAC stimulus. We have a lot of infrastructure investment in the country. But what is the effectiveness of these infrastructure investments? In public finance, we already have a standard argument that there should be a crowding in. There is a complementarity between the infrastructure investment and the private investment. But why private investment is not taking off? Why not it's taking place when we have such a huge fiscal stimulus? I agree that last year we do not have the development expenditure, but we had in the past. The infrastructure is there, but I didn't see any good growth after the CPAC, and I'm worried about that. What we are achieving from those who are the service-related expenditure. So why not we think about to have some mechanism to analyze the effectiveness of our expenditure. And I also want to give the one example of the NFC. And in NFC, we are distributing the resources, but we are not linking those resources for any output. We are not talking about what we want to achieve. So in my thinking, a budget is not, I always talk about zero-based budgeting, performance budgeting. And then my point is, expenditure is not for the sake of expenditure. Employment is not for the sake of employment. There should be some motive behind it. There should be some connection between output, input, and this connection should be visible. And this if we are not achieving what we are planning, why we are spending so much money? Why we are costing so much burden to our economy, and we are not achieving anything? So my point of view is, growth and austerity is not the two things. Growth and austerity can be one thing if we are having the right approach. If we have the growth in our mind, why not our all expenditure and taxation policy move in this one direction? And that direction is to achieve the growth in certain sectors, to achieve some crowding in the certain expenditure. And if we are able to, or successful in the getting crowding in, and we are able to match the complementarity between private and public investment, then we have a wonderful budget. And we have the social protection already in the place, but what we do not have, the effectiveness, our approach is lacking. We are just putting the numbers. We are just putting the money without thinking what we want to achieve and why we want to achieve it. So thank you very much. These are my 3 points. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Abid Sahab. Thank you very much. Abid Sahab, let me come back to you and ask you a very simple question. Abid Sahab, why is it that Pakistan lacks academic research on fiscal policy, or am I wrong? And second question is, why is it that academics are not consulted at all on fiscal policy, whereas the businessman is constantly there telling the government what to do? Academics, I find sadly missing. Abid Sahab, would you like to comment on this?
Well, I think you are right in pointing this out. In terms of fiscal policy, I think in Pakistan nowadays, most of the research is driven by the money, where the money is. So I think most of the researchers are involved in the development sector, where they find a lot of funding opportunities. So fiscal policies in the government's domain mostly, or sometimes there are some donors who come up with some pre-planned studies which are commissioned. So I think there is no formalized academic research on this sector. So whatever studies you find, they are mostly donor funding. There is no theoretical research on fiscal side. As far as I know, there are very few people who are working on the public finance in this country. Very few experts on public finance, and the same goes for international trade. You will also notice that there are hardly any experts on international trade. Even those who are trained in international trade, when they come to Pakistan, they gradually switch their disciplines and they go to the development sector. So most of the funding is in development sector, so that's where most of the researchers are spending most of their time. So this is my understanding.
What do you mean by the development sector? I know newspapers में बड़े लोग लिखते हैं, I'm a development sector professional. मैं हमेशा ट्विटर पे पूछता हूँ development sector है क्या और development sector professional का मतलब क्या होता है? Because मुझे तो समझ नहीं आती development sector क्या है.
Development sector देखें, जितने आपके डोनर हैं, जितनी NGOs हैं, जितने आपके डेवलपमेंट सेक्टर में आप कह लें डिफिड है, USAID फंडिंग लेके आ रहा है, ईडा फंडिंग जायका फंडिंग लेके आ रहा है, see, even Asian Development Bank. So all their projects are geared towards education on something like poverty, well-being, see, gender empowerment, then microfinance, see, and now more recently there are lots of experiments. So people are doing RCTs. So you pick any topic in development and there are lots of RCTs being conducted. So we have so many NGOs in this country. They are also attracting a lot of academics and they are doing work for them. Even the work by UN agencies, if you see deeply, so you will notice that they are also doing mostly development side. There is no work on trade, no work on fiscal side, very little work on monetary or even macroeconomics. So even though I think my understanding is that in good institutions, we always lack academics who are doing macroeconomics. And the reason is that, and I can tell from the experience at LUMS, that most macroeconomists, they left because they could not survive, because there is no funding involved. See, and those who switch to development sectors, so they are always happy. They are like very happy working in Pakistan. So I think this is the dilemma of Pakistan, that there is no money coming in to support certain types of research. And I particularly know that even those who are trained to do international trade, international economics, they are not doing that anymore.
Yani ke our agenda for research in the country is set by the donors. और हुकूमत is sadly absent. अभी मैं आपको एक और बात बताऊं, मैं हर वेबिनार पे लिखता हूं एनीबडी फ्रॉम द, हर तो नहीं, फिर काफी वेबिनार पे कोशिश करता हूं कि एनीबडी फ्रॉम द गवर्नमेंट हियर, मैंने अभी भी लिखा है, एनीबडी फ्रॉम एफपीआर, एनीबडी फ्रॉम एमएफ, एनी पॉलिटिशियन, कोई नहीं आता. मतलब पॉलिटिशियन वेबिनार और ये अपने सिविल सर्वेंट्स, पॉलिटिशियन सिविल सर्वेंट्स और हुकूमत के लोग सोचते हैं कि उनको सब पता है, वो अकले कुल हैं, वो इतने अकले कुल हैं. मुझे याद है हुकूमत में जो फाइनेंस के जो सेक्रेटरी होते थे हमेशा कहते थे आपको नहीं पता, हमें सब पता है, हम सब जानते हैं और आपको नहीं पता. वो सारा फलाने रूल में लिखा हुआ जब उनसे पूछे तो वो कहते थे कि भाई हाँ मैं नहीं पता. साबिर साहब आप बताइए कि ये जो पॉवर्टी पे रिसर्च है, हम करते गए पॉवर्टी, एक दफा मेजर कर लेते फिर क्या होता है, कितनी बारी हमने पॉवर्टी मेजर करना है, हर साल 2 बारी 3 बारी मेजर करते हैं. और वर्ल्ड बैंक कभी पॉवर्टी गिरने नहीं देता, वर्ल्ड बैंक तो हमेशा कहता है पॉवर्टी ऊपर जा रही है. तो आपके पास कोई फिस्कल पॉलिसी पे आप लोग कोई रिसर्च करते हैं, कोई है आपके पास काम फिस्कल पॉलिसी पे?
देखिए जी, बिल्कुल हमने फिस्कल पॉलिसी पे खासा काम किया है. हमारी हर साल एक रिपोर्ट आती है जो बजट के बाद एनालिसिस होते हैं. कुछ सालों में हमने प्री बजट एनालिसिस भी किया. मैं और दूसरी बात है कि एनएफसी का अगर हम देखा जाए तो उसमें हमारा बड़ा कंट्रीब्यूशन है, वो भी फिस्कल पॉलिसी का इंटर गवर्नमेंटल फिस्कल रिलेशन है. मैं यहाँ पे एक बात की वजाहत करना चाहता हूँ कि मसला डोनर्स का नहीं है. मसला बिल्कुल आपने सही कहा नदीम साहब, मैं आपसे 100% एग्री करता हूँ कि जो जहाँ पे पैसों का फायदा हो रहा होता है वहां पे सारी बातें सुनने के लिए होते हैं. मैं किसी का नाम नहीं ले रहा, लेकिन मैंने जब इंटर गवर्नमेंट फिस्कल उसमें था तो मैं देखता था कि चारों फाइनेंस मिनिस्टर, चीफ मिनिस्टर सब आकर एक्सपर्ट्स की बात सुन रहे होते थे. इसी तरह से जब कहीं पे भी आशा होता है कि टैक्स रेवेन्यू से कुछ पैसे बढ़ जाएंगे तो आप जिस मिनिस्टर को बुला लें और वो पूरा दिन बैठने के लिए तैयार होता था सेमिनार्स में, कि सिर्फ वो ये जानना चाहता था कि एडिशनल मनी कैसे आएगी. लेकिन जब उनको लगता है कि ये रिफॉर्म्स की बात करेंगे, जो ऐसी बातें करेंगे जो उनकी मर्जी की नहीं है, तो वो उसकी तरफ नहीं आते. दूसरी बात ये जो है एसपीडी की बहुत सारी रिपोर्ट्स हैं कि फिस्कल पॉलिसी किस तरह से अफेक्ट करती है पॉवर्टी को. और हमने ग्रोथ के हवाले से भी कहा है कि ग्रोथ एक खास थ्रेशोल्ड से जब क्रॉस करती है तो बहुत ज्यादा इफेक्ट करती है. जहां तक वर्ल्ड बैंक का नंबर है वो तो डेफिनेशनल इशू है कि आप किस तरह से करते हैं. एसपीडीसी ने एक और अल्टरनेटिव पॉवर्टी मेजर निकाला हुआ है और हमारे नंबर जो है वो वर्ल्ड बैंक के नंबर से और जो गवर्नमेंट के नंबर से वो हैं वो बड़े डिफरेंट है. तो अगर आप सेमिनार के साथी इंटरेस्टेड हो तो मैं लिंक भी शेयर कर दूंगा हमारी पॉवर्टी लाइन का, और हमारी कुछ रिपोर्ट्स हैं उनका भी लिंक शेयर कर दूंगा. हेलो,
जरूर गुड. अच्छा जी, ये जरा इकरामुल हक साहब, आपने बहुत शोर मचाया टैक्सेशन पे, माशाल्लाह यू रिटन अ लॉट, बट कोई सुन रहा है?
Nadeem sir, they are exactly in the same frame of mind as you have mentioned, that they know everything. And unfortunately, I will say that from academia, on properly on any tax code or tax policy, you will find very few literature in Pakistan. As I told that most of us cannot even read those tax codes written in a way that they have so much cumbersome procedures with that, as SAROs, for example, on daily basis, if you keep on issuing statutory regulatory order and you change the law passed by the parliament, then how you will keep track of that? For example, a powerful man, he goes and he says, I need an SRO where you give me 100% input, others are getting 90%. So immediately there is an SRO which is saying that this sector or this person or this particular, even by name, he can get that benefit. So the problem with the overall structure, as I mentioned earlier, is that we live in different silos and different islands actually. Against they are very good work must be doing. I'm not saying that nothing has been done, but as far as taxation side is concerned, it is such a bizarre kind of tax system that we have that I keep on writing, Zema, keep on writing. You also mentioned that if you want to know how bad Pakistan tax policy is, you must read our work. But who is reading that? Both books have been placed free, one at Pide website, the other at Prime. And how many academicians have given feedback? And
Great.
how we
Thank
can,
you.
as far as Federal Board of Revenue is concerned, they say, no, we are not ready to listen to you because we have our own agenda. We know better than you. We don't care about what you are saying because when it will go to Parliament, even they cannot read the Finance Act and Finance Bill. So they just have mudslinging, and after that Finance Bill is passed. Nobody knows what will the consequences of these erratic and oppressive taxes on growth, on people, on their personal life, on inflation and many things. There is no proper study on that.
Salahuddin Sahab, ye bataiye, Salahuddin Sahab, ke you mentioned that the government has capacity and that we know about growth, etc. I don't understand कि जबकि वो कहाँ से उनको अक्ले कुल है, उनको सब कुछ अर्श से पता चल जाता है, वो कहाँ से पढ़ते हैं, क्या सीखते हैं जो उनको आप कहते हैं सब कुछ पता है। और माशाल्लाह इस मुल्क की पॉलिसी, अब मुझे कह रहे हैं ये अपना साबिर साहब के जी डोनर्स का कोई इन्फ्लुएंस, तो सारी पॉलिसी तो डोनर से बनवाते हैं। आपने पब्लिक फाइनेंशियल एक्ट को मेंशन किया, वो मुझे पता है डोनर कंसल्टेंट ने एक्ट लिखा है, नेपरा का एक्ट डोनर कंसल्टेंट ने लिखा, कंपटीशन कमीशन का एक्ट डोनर कंसल्टेंट ने लिखा। मेरे भाई ये मतलब हुकूमत चलाने का कोई तरीका है? और हम लोग कहते हैं हमें सिक्योरिटी चाहिए, फूड सिक्योरिटी चाहिए, इकोनॉमिक सिक्योरिटी चाहिए। हम ऐसे अजीब लोग हैं कि हमने अपना दिमाग किसी और को दे दिया, पॉलिसी किसी और को दे दिया, और हम सोचते हैं गन्स लेके हम पॉलिसी बना लेंगे, हम डिफेंस कर लेंगे। यार मुझे ये बात नहीं समझ आ रही साबिर साहब। सॉरी सलाहुद्दीन साहब बताइए।
जी सर, पहली तो बात ये सर, रैशनैलिटी शुड बी द एट्रीब्यूट ऑफ ऑल पीपल। ये जो डोनर है उसका एक ऑब्जेक्टिव है ना, उसको फुलफिल करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। गवर्नमेंट का एक ऑफिशियल है, उसका एक ऑब्जेक्टिव है। एक सेक्रेटरी जो प्रिंसिपल अकाउंटिंग ऑफिसर है बजट की अपनी लाइन मिनिस्ट्री का, उसका ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या है कि उसने अपनी टर्म 3 साल की कम से कम पूरी कर ली, अगर वो पेट्रोलियम डिवीजन में लग गया या कहीं लग गया, उसने उसका अपना एक ऑब्जेक्टिव है। गवर्नमेंट का क्या ऑब्जेक्टिव है? काम चलता रहे, काम चलता रहे।
साहब ने एक चीज याद रखें, सेक्रेटरी साहब ने रिटायर होकर तो डोनर के पास ही जाना है ना।
डोनर के पास चले जाना है।
उनका तो ऑब्जेक्टिव डोनर को सेटिस्फाई करना है।
इसी वजह से तो डोनर ने उनको प्रिंसिपल अकाउंटिंग ऑफिसर बनवाया, जिस तरह आप बता रहे हैं कि अगर वो जो मैनेजमेंट एक्ट जो है उसके मुताबिक बने ना। गवर्नमेंट को हमें चांस देना चाहिए। देखिए, Hollande was at the lowest ebb of any French president at the end of his term in 2016-17, but he went ahead with whatever he thought is correct. Margaret Thatcher was at the lowest ebb. हमारा प्रॉब्लम ये है कि हम एक ही चीज के पीछे भागते हैं, वो भी नहीं मिलती, और वो है पॉपुलैरिटी। ईच गवर्नमेंट उसको तैयार तकरीबन बैठे होते हैं कि हमने तो अनपॉपुलर होके चले जाना है। So popularity is the only thing that they seek, and that's the only thing that they don't get by the end of their term. क्योंकि पॉलिटिकल पार्टी का इंस्टीट्यूशनलाइज नहीं है, एक इंडिविजुअल है। इंडिविजुअल कहता है यार मैं अपने 4 साल कपा लूं, अगली टर्म तो वैसे भी हमारी नहीं है, सो आई विल बी वेटिंग। वो ऐसा काम क्यों करता है? रैशनैलिटी ऐसा काम क्यों करता है? देयर आर एंट्रेंच्ड बेनिफिट्स। अब अगर वो पाथ डिपेंडेंसी की थ्योरी अगर हम देखें, अगर वो चेंज करता है तो तो जो एग्जिस्टिंग बेनिफिशियरीज हैं, they would stand certain to lose the benefits that were accumulated because of the wrong path that was taken. But if the path correction comes in, then the beneficiaries of a path correction are uncertain, small, and are not going to give salam to the man who holds power. तो उसके पास choice क्या है? We need to cultivate a different set of circumstances for making our politicians do their job in a different manner. Now, what is the right way? कोई एक पॉलिटिशियन, 4 पॉलिटिशियन तो ऐसे मिल जाएं जो कि बजट के सिस्टम को समझते हो। अब ये जो बात हो रही थी कि हमें सब पता है, उनको वाकई सब पता है, लेकिन क्या पता है? जो चीज मैटर नहीं करती है, किस दफ्तर से किस दफ्तर में जाने का तरीकाकार कौन सा है, बजट कॉल सर्कुलर को किस तरीके से भिजवाया जाए तो लाइन मिनिस्ट्री से डिमांड पहले आ जाएगी। वो बिल्कुल मैकेनिकल, जो मैकेनिक्स ऑफ द बजट मेकिंग है, उसके वो बादशाह हैं। और एकेडमिशियन को उसका पता ही नहीं है। उसका क्यों नहीं पता है? क्योंकि वो इतना क्लोज्ड है और वो इतने पहलवान है अपने काम के। उनको क्या काम आता है? फाइल घुमाना। और वो एकेडमिक को ये नहीं पता कि फाइल शुरू कहां से होती है, खत्म कहां पे होती है। और उनके लिए कामयाबी का मेयार यही है कि हमने खैर खूबी से इकोनॉमिक सर्वे छाप लिया फलानी तारीख तक।
ये एक मिनट सलाउद्दीन साहब, आप बड़ी अच्छी ऑडिटरी करते हैं, शेरो शायरी बड़ी अच्छी करते हैं, बट प्लीज ये बात नहीं, एकेडमिक को भी नहीं पता कि मतलब एकेडमिक क्यों हमारे मुल्क में इतना फारिग है कि वो बार बार पॉवर्टी लाइन मेजर करता है, वो बार बार मेजर करता है वो एनवायरनमेंट का बेनिफिट और ये और वो पता नहीं क्या क्या दकियानूसी किस्म के पेपर्स आते हैं, मैं देखता रहता हूं। पर जो सेंट्रल प्रॉब्लम है पाकिस्तान, आपने एक और बात कही, फॉर एग्जांपल हमने ऑस्टेरिटी की बात कही। ऑस्टेरिटी इज अ बैड वर्ड इन इकोनॉमिक्स। आप अगर जरूर किताब पढ़े, यानिस वुफारकेस की किताब जरूर पढ़े, एडल्ट्स इन द रूम, ठीक है, और ऑस्टेरिटी पे वो लाइफ की किताब पढ़े। ऑस्टेरिटी हमें मार रही है। आपको मैं बात बताऊं, तनख्वाहों के बाद हुकूमत के पास पैसे कोई नहीं, तो हुकूमत इज अ बिग एम्प्लॉयमेंट एजेंसी। आपने जो कहा ना 27 बिलियन, जरूर 27 बिलियन बचता है, पर मुझे बताएं हुकूमत ने अब आफ्टर 18th अमेंडमेंट फेडरल गवर्नमेंट ने अपने आप को छोटा किया, बड़ा किया? उन्होंने बड़ा कर दिया। 18th अमेंडमेंट के बाद फेडरल गवर्नमेंट में सिर्फ 6 या 7 मिनिस्ट्रीज होनी चाहिए थी, यहाँ इस वक्त 47 मिनिस्ट्रीज हैं, ठीक है जी। मतलब पॉइंट ये, हम फिस्कल डिसिप्लिन तो कहीं नहीं मानते, उसके बाद हम हर रोज एक नई एजेंसी बना देते। अब एक रियल एस्टेट रेगुलेटरी अथॉरिटी बन रही है, भाई क्यों बन रही है? उससे पहले नया पाकिस्तान हाउसिंग अथॉरिटी 10 बन गई है। खुदा के वास्ते हम बार बार दफ्तर खोली जाते हैं, भाई दफ्तर खोलने का एक्सपेंस होता है। आपने यूएस गवर्नमेंट की बात की, बड़ी अच्छी बात की। आपको पता है यूएस गवर्नमेंट में एक मिनिस्ट्री एड ऑन हुई है सिंस द सेकंड वर्ल्ड वॉर, वो होमलैंड सिक्योरिटी थी। उस पर कितनी डिबेट हुई थी, ठीक है। वो भी उसामा बिन लादेन ना बम फाड़ता तो नहीं होती, ठीक है। वहां एक डिपार्टमेंट बनाने पे बड़ी डिबेट होती है, एकदम डिपार्टमेंट। यहाँ तो एकदम डिपार्टमेंट बन जाता है, लोग डिपार्टमेंट की कुर्सियां लेके बैठे हुए हैं, बजट नहीं है। तो ये भी बजट इररिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी की बात है, देखनी पड़ेगी। लेट मी गेट अ फ्यू क्वेश्चंस प्लीज। फातिमा सादिक, आप कुछ पूछ रही थी? फातिमा सादिक, डू यू वांट टू से समथिंग?
Assalamu alaikum.
जी,
Can you hear me?
no,
Okay, my name is Fatma Sadiq and I am a lecturer at IBA. मेरा था question Professor Barki से related to education.
जी।
So sir, मतलब obviously I am also doing my own research about education and naturally हमें पता है कि हमारे जो enrollment rate है, जो हमारे सारे major indicators हैं, हम उससे बहुत पीछे हैं। और जो development goals हैं उनको तो हम सर मुश्किल से ही achieve कर पाएंगे। Now जब COVID भी आ गया सर, मतलब it's estimated कि around millions जो students हैं they will like drop out of school. This is after like COVID. So yes sir. Now related to budget sir, मतलब अब जो education finance minister जो कर रही है, मतलब they are moving towards tele schools, radio education and all hybrid system. And sir, I think they don't even realize कि जो मतलब चले रेडियो का एक्सेस सबके पास नहीं है। 18% पॉपुलेशन है जो रेडियो यूज करती है। अभी रिसेंट सर्वे से मैंने देखा था, ठीक है। इंटरनेट अवेलेबिलिटी नहीं है, लोड शेडिंग वगैरह ये सब चीजें। अगर हम इस सिस्टम की तरफ भी मूव कर रहे हैं तो सर इसमें भी बहुत हर्डल्स है। नाउ सर एक ऑलरेडी मतलब स्टूडेंट्स आर वे बिहाइंड। नाउ आई हैव फाउंड आउट के एवरेज ईयर ऑफ स्कूलिंग इन पाकिस्तान इज अराउंड 9 years, बट उस 9 years में से जो बच्चे सब्सटेंस पर लर्न करते हैं वो है अराउंड 5 years का। अब ड्यू टू कोविड वो भी गिर रहा है सर, अराउंड 4.8 years पे जा रहा है। ये भी वर्ल्ड बैंक की स्टडी उन्होंने सिमुलेशंस किए हैं। और सर एक बड़ी अच्छी मतलब मैंने कल ही देखी चीज कि एक फेडरल मिनिस्ट्री के पास एक डिपार्टमेंट है जो एजुकेशन स्टैटिस्टिक्स पब्लिश करता है। सर उन्होंने 17-18 के बाद कुछ पब्लिश नहीं किया है, मतलब we don't have up to date figures about education enrollment वगैरह के बारे में. तो
Good
सर
job, Fatma. Ask your question, please.
तो सर my question is के given all these मतलब conditions, ठीक है, ये सारी जो चीजें हैं, अब बजट में इन चीजों के बारे में कोई डिस्कशन होती है या what will be मतलब should be policy recommendation for the people who are making budget or मतलब for who people who are doing research in this, considering all these circumstances, all that which is happening right now.
ठीक है जी, थैंक यू. मैं जरा क्वेश्चंस इकट्ठे कर लूं, then I'll come back to the panel. Fatma Bibi was very good questions. Come and do a webinar with us on education. We'd certainly like to host you. Abedullah Sahab.
Okay, I'm Abedullah from Pide. My question is from Dr. Abid Barki, basically. So Dr. Abid has basically, covered all the seed issues related to, but he missed one important thing, I think, the value chain related. Because unless we train the different stakeholders working at different nodes of value chain, if we will not train them, upgrade the value chain or different commodities, that we cannot achieve the benefit. And second thing, my comment is basically, we do not really need to allocate additional budget to agriculture sector. If we just, correct the allocation of the budget. Currently, we are spending 150 billion on fertilizer subsidy and almost 60 to 7 billion on wheat stock. If we just withdraw those, two things and allocate that budget to the agriculture research, and we can really, achieve within next 10 to 15 years a very good, high quality, high seed, high productive varieties, and that will shift the productivity frontier at the higher level. And moreover, if we just withdraw the fertilizer subsidy, the prices of wheat will increase just 2 rupees per kg, which is really not very high. So not here, whatever we talk, the question is that who, बिल्ली के गले में घंटी कौन बांधेगा? क्योंकि जो fertilizer subsidy है, वो 2 एंग्रो और फौजी फर्टिलाइजर को जा रहे हैं.
साहब देखिए, बिल्ली के गले में घंटी डालना हमारा काम नहीं है, वो किसी और का काम है. पॉइंट ये, पर हमारे पास तो घंटी है ही नहीं. जब रिसर्च होगी तो हम घंटी डालेंगे, जब रिसर्च ही नहीं तो हम क्या करेंगे? हम तो डोनर का काम कर रहे हैं भाई, बार बार पॉवर्टी मेजर करके, तो पॉवर्टी तो हम देते रहते हैं उन्हें, बाकी हमारे पास क्या है? आबिद साहब बताइए, ओवर टू यू, क्वेश्चंस टू यू. अब आई थिंक वी शुड हेड टुवर्ड्स क्लोजर. जी अब
ओके, आई थिंक पहला क्वेश्चन है ऑन वैल्यू चेन. आई थिंक इनका पॉइंट ये है कि विदाउट अपग्रेडेशन ऑफ वैल्यू चेन एग्रीकल्चर सेक्टर तरक्की नहीं कर सकता. वेल आई थिंक इसमें देयर इज लॉट ऑफ पोटेंशियल. इनकी बिल्कुल बात ठीक है. अभी तक whatever initiative they have come mostly from the private sector. I think one example is the dairy supply chain, where the processing companies have played a major role. And I think this is entirely a market-driven sort of approach, where private sector has taken the lead. इसमें गवर्नमेंट का सच कोई इसमें रोल नहीं था. There are also other value chains which are emerging, and particularly with the ये जो आपके बड़े-बड़े supermarkets हैं, with the coming up of supermarkets, so we will see more and more, I think, improvement in the value chain. So I think there need to be some sort of regulation so that these value chains could be upgraded. Abhi it is functioning in an ad hoc manner, so we don't have any proper set of rules on how these values. इसका potential तो बहुत ज़्यादा है. I think इसमें I fully agree with Abedullah साहब कि इसमें आपकी जो farm produce उसके बाद उसके इतने ज़्यादा यानी components हैं within the agriculture sector, तो उन सब में there is a lot of opportunity of creating jobs and creating small businesses. So they are all there. So there's a lot of hope, a lot of opportunity. If you talk to a farmer, if you talk to a progressive farmer, there is only one complaint that you will receive from the farmer. वो कह रही हमसे मार्केटिंग नहीं होती. Somehow ये बताएं कि किस तरह हम इसकी मार्केटिंग करें. कि let's say there is a farmer producing mangoes, he sells a crate of 10 kg for 250 rupees and the same crate sells for 1200 rupees in the market. ये एक बेसिक सा सवाल है जो हर फार्मर पूछता है कि मेरी प्रोड्यूस इतने की है, आगे जाके इतने में बिकती है, मुझे नहीं इसका बेनिफिट मिलता. तो आई थिंक दिस इज ए एज ओल्ड प्रॉब्लम. इस पे मार्केटिंग कमेटीज जो उनका इसमें काफी रोल है, जो जिस वे की मार्केट में जिस तरह सेल होती हैं, तो देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ इम्प्रूवमेंट दैट इज पॉसिबल. सेकेंडली इनका पॉइंट है कि जो एलोकेशन है एग्रीकल्चर में, आप बजट ना भी बढ़ाएं, उसकी एलोकेशन को चेंज कर दें तो उससे इम्प्रूवमेंट आएगी. आई थिंक दिस इज ए मैटर. इसमें गवर्नमेंट की जो लॉबीज हैं वो बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले करती हैं कि अब नेचुरली फर्टिलाइजर के ऊपर सब्सिडी देनी है. दैट्स द इजीएस्ट थिंग दैट गवर्नमेंट कैन डू. ठीक है, आप सब्सिडी उस पर दे दें, मगर ये देखना है कि फायदा किसको होगा. कि जो फार्मर हैं उनमें क्या जो 5 एकड़ वाला है, क्या उसको सब्सिडी मिलेगी या ये सब्सिडी किसके पास जाएगी. तो आई थिंक इसके इनइक्वालिटीज के इश्यूज हमेशा रहते हैं. तो बट माय मेजर पॉइंट वाज दैट इन सारी चीजों से सबसे एक ज्यादा चीज ये है कि आप अगर आपने प्रोडक्शन फंक्शन को आउटवर्ड शिफ्ट करना है तो उसके लिए अभी जरूरत है कि आपका जो सीड क्वालिटी है, इसकी सीड की मार्केटिंग एंड सीड की जो प्रोडक्शन, ये दो चीजें हैं जो कि एक प्राइम रोल प्ले करती हैं. तो आप जिसको मर्जी सब्सिडी दें, कम से कम इसके ऊपर थोड़ी सी अटेंशन होनी चाहिए.
ठीक है, थैंक यू जी, थैंक यू वेरी मच folks. Anybody, any last words? इकराम साहब, साबिर साहब, whatever. जी, कौन बोलना चाह रहा है?
सलाउद्दीन बात कर रहा हूँ सर. एक छोटी सी बात, this word lobby is so demonized कि lobby बड़ी बुरी चीज है. Lobbying is a very good thing. I think people should be allowed to lobby for their interest, but this privileged space for some lobbies and kind of pushing all the other potential lobbies aside, that is wrong. So lobbying is not wrong, but doing the lobbying in a wrong manner, that's wrong. So I think everyone should be given the right to lobby for his
except for academics who don't know how to lobby and who don't know how to research. जी, साबिर साहब, आप कुछ कहना चाहेंगे? इकराम साहब? No? चलें जी, okay. Folks, we had a great... जी, साबिर साहब.
नहीं, बस मैं शुक्रिया अदा करना चाहूंगा सबका कि बहुत अच्छा डिस्कशन हुआ. और माय लास्ट पॉइंट इज के हमें सिर्फ उन्हीं सेक्टर पे फोकस नहीं करना चाहिए या उन्हीं एक्सपेंडिचर और टैक्सेस पे फोकस नहीं करना चाहिए या उन्हीं लोगों पे फोकस नहीं करना चाहिए जो टैक्स दे रहे हैं. हमें बस थोड़ा सा बाहर से सोचना चाहिए. थैंक यू.
वेरी गुड जी, वेरी गुड folks. आई थिंक वी हैड अ ग्रेट डिस्कशन. जो अपशॉट इन तीन डिस्कशंस का वो ये है कि अनफॉर्चुनेटली हमारा बजट बनता है पता नहीं कहाँ, हमारी पॉलिसी बनती पता नहीं कहाँ, एकेडमिक्स इन्वॉल्व नहीं होते, एकेडमिक्स से पूछा नहीं जाता. चलो पूछे बिल्कुल ना, पर एकेडमिक्स को कम से कम पढ़ तो लें. पर एकेडमिक्स भी फिर वो काम करें ना जो पढ़ने के लायक हो. अब हमने रास्ता शुरू किया है, वी गॉट रास्ता रिसर्च फॉर सोशल ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन एडवांसमेंट. वी आर गिविंग ग्रांट्स टू पीपल टू डू रिसर्च एंड आई मस्ट कन्फेस आई एम रिव्यूइंग क्वाइट अ फ्यू ऑफ देम and I must confess people think like donors. Donors have robbed our mind, and I hope that somebody in security is listening to us. We need to think independently if we want to grow and if we want to have independence in the world. You give your mind to somebody else, you are colonized, whether you are physically colonized or not. In fact, what the donors have done is very clever. They've colonized us, but that's beside the point. And again, this emphasis on education, I don't know why we're educating people. Are we only educating them, Abid Saab, to make them donor consultants? What is the purpose of educating them? Policymakers don't need education. They've got everything. At the same time, there is no employment opportunity. There's a 40% unemployment rates among PhDs and among MPhils. I think this whole economy needs a lot of rethinking. Unfortunately, we're not ready to do that. We keep making the same old noises. कि ये कि हमारे पास रेवेन्यू नहीं है, हम मर गए, हमारे पास ये नहीं है. हमने एस्टिमेट किया है हमारे पास सिर्फ लाहौर में 1.3 ट्रिलियन डॉलर्स की इन्वेस्टमेंट अपॉर्चुनिटीज है. पैसा फिर रहा होता है हवा में. पैसा सिर्फ टैक्स से नहीं आता, पैसा आता है समझ सोच से. How to do things, how to make things, how to make things happen. When somebody invented the internet, he didn't know he was inventing a multi-trillion, multi-quadrillion dollar economy, but it has been invented and somebody's benefited from it. Money lies or growth lies in your ability to rethink, not your ability or be creative, not your ability to be a monkey and a follower. Thank you very much, folks. All the best. Enjoyed it. Always enjoy these things. Learn a lot. Khuda Hafiz. Thank you, all the speakers. Bye-bye.